Good to see you. Hey, Cody, can you hand me that stool? Thanks. It's great to see you. Welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, in person or online, we're glad you're here. My name's Josh. I'm one of the pastors here. And we're continuing a series called Bible Stories for Grownups. We've been looking at some of the stories in the Bible that are well-known, and we'll look at some that are not really well-known, and we're asking, what do they mean for us today? Before we jump into that, I just wanted to talk about one thing, and that is our next Sunday Fun Day lunch. And if you're like, what is a Sunday Fun Day lunch? It's a lot what it sounds like. We have lunch on a Sunday, and it's fun. And so it's coming up on October 7th, and it just so happens we're going to have a new friend of ours here that day, a guy named Jonathan Merritt. He's a writer, and he recently released a book called Learning to Speak God from Scratch, Why Sacred Words Are Vanishing and How We Can Revive Them. So he's going to be on his book tour, and he's going to be with us, and he's going to talk a bit about, give a sermon about this on that Sunday morning, and he'll be around for lunch. He'll have books. You can get them signed. You can ask questions. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you pencil that, or actually just go ahead and ink that in, because you want to be here for that. On October 7th, Jonathan will be here. And if you want to go ahead and order the book, they have it on Amazon, but if you would rather wait and get it in person while he's here, you can also do that. So let's have a word of prayer, and then we're going to jump in to Genesis 12. Excuse me. God, we are reminded today just how deeply we are loved. That our performance, that all the good we do or all the wrong we do, that none of that defines us. None of that changes how deeply we're loved. And so if any of us today are struggling with that, we're struggling with our worth and our identity and what it means to be human, may we just be reminded today that we are loved. As we spend some time in this ancient story today about a guy named Abram, may we see a bit of ourselves in this story, and may we respond to whatever call you have for us. We love you, and we pray in Jesus' name, and everybody said, Amen. So today we're going to eventually get to Genesis 12, the story of a guy. He later becomes Abraham, but when we meet him, he's going to be a guy named Abram, and he's going to have this sense that he's supposed to go somewhere, but he's actually not sure where, which is a great way to begin a journey, right? I've got to go somewhere. I'm just not sure where is and where I'm supposed to go. But before we do that, I want to just sort of recap where we've been, because we started in Genesis. Chapters 2 and 3 is where we started this series. And we've been noticing that there's been a movement that has gone east of Eden. If you recall, when the first human beings eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they're cast out of Eden and they're sent east of Eden. God drove out the human to the east of the Garden of Eden. And if you remember that there were these cherubim, right, which are not cute little angel babies, but are like big winged things with like 8 faces and animal faces. It's pretty crazy. And so they were driven out east of Eden. Then in Genesis 4, a story we didn't look at, but Cain, the older sibling, Adam and Eve's first child, actually murders his younger brother Abel. And after the murder is discovered, Cain left the Lord's presence and he settled down in the land of Nod. And guess where the land of Nod is? East of Eden. And they just fell asleep all the time in the land of Nod. Come on. Then in Genesis 11, we come to this moment where all the people on earth had one language and the same words. When they traveled where? Are you picking up a theme? When they traveled east, they found a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them hard." They used bricks for stones and asphalt for mortar. They said, "Come, let's build for ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and let's make a name for ourselves so that we won't be dispersed all over all the earth." Right? So, by the way, this is a story about technology. When the brick was invented, it was a revolutionary step. I mean, before the brick, you were just trying to make stones go together, right? And now you have these uniform bricks. It's a story about what happens with technology. And I think it's really interesting in our era where, I mean, if you think about in the last 40 years, the amount of technological, I was just thinking about this the other day. We got my dad, and it ended up being mine, but, you know, I was trying to be generous as a 3-year-old or whatever I was. We got my dad a Nintendo for Father's Day. I think it was 1984. And before Nintendo, you had, like, who had an Atari? right? Yeah, we had an Atari, but when Nintendo came out, it was like a whole different world. And you think about where we were then, and now they have like virtual reality headsets to put on and you play video games, right? I mean, it's like in the last 40 years or so, we've seen just a ridiculous amount. Think about this. In your pocket, probably, or on you somewhere, is a device that makes phone calls, sends emails, surfs the web, takes pictures. What a weird thing. What a weird thing to carry around in your pocket. You could have like all the information that's ever existed in your pocket. And what do we do with that? When we were in New York last month, one of the interesting things to watch is at an intersection where, and by the way, people don't yield or they don't follow the crosswalk. So just know, you just run across there with reckless abandon if you're ever there. But people are walking across like this. How do you know when you've reached your destination? But we do this, right? We're like in the future, our species will evolve to like just look like this all the time. And it's a really important question in our era. This is not the sermon today. But what are we going to do with technology? How are we going to let technology? Is technology going to bring us closer to one another, or is it going to drive us apart from one another? Like, those are important questions. And it all happens east of Eden. And if you think about where we began with creation, and then we went to exile where the people are cast out of Eden. And then right after that, we have the first murder, and then we have violence and revenge that's taking over the world. And then there's this flood because all this violence has reached critical mass. And then we go to the Tower of Babel, and then we are just confused. God actually responds. It's really funny in Hebrew because God looks down and he's like, well, I'm going to have to go down to see the tower. You know, it's this tower that reaches the sky, and God's eyesight's not that good. And so like, God has to come down and see the little tiny tower they've built, and he confuses languages. God confuses languages as a result. So this is where we've been going. We're moving eastward. And the move eastward is symbolic of this move away from sort of life, not in the presence of God, because in God we live, move, and exist, but life acknowledging the presence of God, or life becoming aware of what it means to be a human and be in relationship with God and each other. And things are just unraveling pretty quickly. And then we come to a series of genealogies. How many of you just, when you hear genealogy in the Bible and you know you're going to get some begats, you're just like, yes. How many of you ever wondered why they put those things in there? Anybody wonder that? Here's the thing. To us, they may seem like just a waste of time. Like, I don't care whose great-grandfather was who. But in the ancient world, genealogy was more about destiny than anything else. The genealogies in the Bible tend to be about something that's coming, right? So Jesus' genealogy, there are two of them, and they're different in Matthew and Luke, and yet they both are saying who this child is destined to be. And so we come to one of Noah's sons, Shem, and Shem has a genealogy that goes to a guy named Terah. And then Terah has a son named Abraham. Here's a little slice of this genealogical goodness. When Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abraham. How many of you at 70 are like, I think it's time to start a family? 70, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. These are Terah's descendants. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran became the father of Lot. Haran died while with his father Terah in his native land of Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor both married. Abram's wife was Sarai, and Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, father of both Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was unable to have children. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his son Abram's wife Sarai, his daughter-in-law. They left Ur of the Chaldeans for the land of Canaan, and arriving in Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. So this family is making a move. They're pulling up stakes, and they're going somewhere. And when you begin to see the Abraham story, you'll begin to get a sense of this movement. So this is Ur of the Chaldeans, which later became sort of part of the Babylonian Empire. And it's located in which direction from Canaan? East. And when Abram, because he starts as Abram, when he begins the movement toward Canaan, which direction does he go? It's a movement west, right? He goes a little north, but then ultimately he's going west. What does this say about the story we're about to read of Abram? He's leading people back west. What is west? West is back in the direction we came from. back to the garden, back toward wholeness in our relationship with God, with one another, with the earth, back toward wholeness. So here's the story of Abram, Genesis 12. The Lord said to Abram, leave your land, your family, your father's household, for the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name respected, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Those who curse you, I will curse. All the families of the earth will be blessed because of you. Abram left just as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Now, Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. And what you'll discover if you keep reading, we don't have time to read the whole story of Abraham today, but what you'll find is that part of this blessing that Abram's going to bring to the world, that God's going to bring through his family, is that he's going, at this point, he doesn't have kids. And so the way that's going to happen is he and his wife, Sarai, are going to have a baby. Now, God is trying to bring something new into the world, to bring people back into the way that they should be. And God's great idea for this is a 75-year-old man having a child with his wife. I mean, how many of you, does that sound like plan A? Is that where you start? I know this old dude's going to have a baby, right? That just seems like a weird way to begin. I mean, at that point in your life, you're not thinking about decorating a nursery. You're just glad your kids are gone out of the house, right? It's like now it's empty nest time, baby. It's get an RV and see the countryside. It's not, I guess we got to go get a crib and a changing table. And I think there's something, and I don't want to get into this too deeply today, but I think there's something there about when we feel like that our moment is past and what we have to offer can't get it done. Yet something powerful can happen. I mean, that's sort of why these genealogies are important in the New Testament, is because what happens is you have somebody who, all the women that are named, which is rare, but in Jesus' genealogy, the women in Matthew that are named are all women who were somehow compromised sexually. Through prostitution or through sexual, they'd been, and then here's Mary, a young girl who's also viewed as being compromised, and yet something good and powerful happens. So the story begins, and you'll find this all over Genesis, with women who can't conceive, and something happens. And it seems like what we're being taught through the story is, like, never give up. Never think that it's actually over. Because whatever it is, no matter how bad you messed up, whatever, there's something beautiful that can be brought into the world through your life. Now, when we come to the story of Abram, we meet him here. Genealogy, and he has this sense that he's being called to leave. And so what would happen in the Hebrew Bible is that you would have scribes and rabbis and teachers who would come to a text and realize there's all sorts of background information on this person we just don't have. Wouldn't it be great to know something about Abram before he became a character in the Bible? What can we? And so they would create stories called midrash. And these stories are sort of parabolic. They're not meant to be taken literally, but they're meant to reflect something of the character of the person so that you get to know them. And so there's this story about Abram before he left home. And I want to just share the story with you because I think it's interesting. Abram's father, Terah, owned an idol-making shop. And Terah went on a journey, and he left Abram in charge of the shop. And a man comes in, and he wants to buy an idol. And Abram said, well, how old are you? And the man says, I'm 50. And Abram laughs and says, you're 50, and yet you want to worship a statue that's not even a day old. And the man leaves shamed. Then a woman comes in, and this woman wants to make an offering to the statues. And so she does, and what Abram does is he takes a stick, and he smashes all the idols with it, except the biggest one. And he puts the stick in the hand of the biggest idol. And then his father comes home, and he's like, what happened to the shop? What happened to all the idols? And Abram said, oh, this woman came by to offer an offering. And they all started arguing over who got to eat it. And so the big one took a stick and smashed all the other ones. They're all gone. So Abram's father, Terah, says, these are just idols. They have no knowledge. They can't do that. And he says they have no knowledge, and yet you worship them. And so he decides, well, we've got to do something about this boy. He's on the wrong path. And so they go to a guy named Nimrod. How many of you have heard Nimrod? Right? It's often used as an insult. he's mentioned one place in the Bible as a descendant of Noah, and so he gets a cameo in this story of Abram. So that takes him to Nimrod, so Nimrod can line him out. And Nimrod said, Abram, we should worship fire.